Hi, friends. Let me tell you a story. Just relax and close your eyes. Carthage, a name that once commanded fear and respect across the Mediterranean. A city that grew from nothing but a band of settlers into a rival of Rome itself. Its story is one of ambition, brilliance, resilience, and tragedy. The tale begins with the Phoenicians. From their homeland on the eastern shores of the Mediterranean, these master sailors spread outward, founding colonies and trading posts wherever the winds carried them. They came not as conquerors, but as merchants. Their wealth flowed from timber, glass, dyes, and, most of all, trade. With cedar from Lebanon, purple cloth prized by kings, and skilled craftsmanship, the Phoenicians carved a reputation as the great middlemen of the ancient world. Among their colonies was one that would outgrow them all. According to tradition, in 814 BCE, Queen Dido, also called Elissa, fled from Tyre, escaping political turmoil. With loyal followers, she sailed west until she landed on the coast of North Africa. There, on a bay with a natural harbor, she struck a deal with local tribes. The settlement she founded was called Carthage, the new city. This was the beginning of Carthage. From the very start, Carthage's destiny was bound to the sea. Its location was perfect, a hub between Africa, Europe, and the islands of the Mediterranean. To the west lay rich lands of Iberia, with silver mines and fertile plains. To the north, Sicily and Sardinia offered grain and trade routes. To the south, vast Africa held ivory, gold, and exotic goods. Carthage was in the middle of it all, and it would soon control it all. The city expanded rapidly. Its harbors became legendary, one for commerce, where merchant ships unloaded goods from across the world, and a circular military harbor designed with astonishing precision, where warships could be repaired and launched in secret. This double harbor system became the beating heart of Carthage's power. Wealth poured in. Carthaginian merchants were famed for their skill, bargaining with Greeks, Etruscans, and Egyptians alike. They traded slaves, metals, grain, and luxury items. With each voyage, Carthage grew richer, and with wealth came strength. Its navy became the greatest in the western Mediterranean. Sleek war galleys, quinqueremes with 5 rows of oars, dominated the seas. Their bronze rams were designed to shatter enemy ships. Their crews drilled with precision. With naval supremacy, Carthage controlled the lifelines of trade. But Carthage was not only a city of ships and markets. It was also a city of religion and tradition. Its people worshipped Baal Hammon, the chief god, often depicted with a beard and horns, and Tanit, the goddess of fertility and the moon. Temples rose in their honor, rituals were performed, and sacrifices offered. To the Carthaginians, their gods were guardians of prosperity and survival. Politically, Carthage was ruled not by kings, but by councils and magistrates. Its government combined oligarchy and republic, with wealthy merchant families exerting great influence. The Council of Elders, known as the 104, governed much of the state's affairs. Though power rested with the elite, Carthage's stability was rooted in trade, not tyranny. By the 5th century BCE, Carthage was the undisputed master of the western Mediterranean. Its empire stretched across North Africa, controlling fertile lands that supplied grain and food. Colonies dotted Sardinia, Corsica, and the Balearic Islands. Its fleet patrolled the seas, ensuring safe passage for its merchants and defending its territories. Carthage was rich, powerful, and ambitious. But greatness always attracts rivals. The Greeks pushing westward, collided with Carthaginian influence in Sicily. For centuries, the two powers fought bitter wars over the island, each seeking control of its fertile plains and strategic position. Sometimes Carthage triumphed, sometimes the Greeks pushed back. The struggle was long and exhausting, but Carthage endured. Yet a greater enemy was rising. To the north, beyond the Italian peninsula, a city was growing in strength and ambition. Rome, once a minor power among Italian tribes, had begun to expand. It absorbed its neighbors, forged alliances, and built disciplined armies. Rome and Carthage had no quarrel at first, and in fact, they were allies during the wars against Pyrrhus of Epirus. But both powers eyed Sicily, and in Sicily their fates would collide. The stage was set for a conflict that would shape the ancient world, a conflict that would see Carthage face not just another rival, but the one power determined to erase it. The Punic Wars were about to begin. The First Punic War. The spark of the First Punic War was struck in Sicily. For centuries, this island had been a crossroads of empires, fertile, wealthy, and strategically placed in the very heart of the Mediterranean. Carthage already controlled parts of it, but the eastern cities remained Greek, and now Rome's gaze turned southward. In 264 BCE, a conflict in the small city of Messana drew both powers into confrontation. The Mamertines, mercenaries who had seized the city, appealed first to Carthage and then to Rome for aid. Both answered, and soon the two greatest powers of the western Mediterranean stood face to face. What began as a local dispute escalated into full-scale war. Rome, a land power, had little naval experience. Carthage, by contrast, was a master of the seas. Its admirals commanded fleets of kinkaremes, its sailors drilled to perfection. On land, however, Rome's legions proved formidable, disciplined, and relentless. The early years of the war showed the strengths of both sides. Carthage dominated the seas, raiding the Italian coast and supplying its garrisons in Sicily. Rome countered on land, driving Carthaginian allies back and pressing deeper into the island. Neither side could deliver a decisive blow, but Rome was nothing if not adaptable. Realizing that it could not win without a fleet, the Republic embarked on a staggering enterprise. Building a navy from scratch, legend tells that Rome captured a Carthaginian quinquereme and used it as a model, constructing hundreds of ships in record time. To compensate for its inexperience at sea, Rome devised a deadly innovation: the corvus, a boarding bridge with an iron spike. With it, Roman soldiers could turn sea battles into land battles, their area of expertise. The results were dramatic. At Mylae in 260 BCE, the Romans won their first naval victory. More would follow. Carthaginian ships, superior in maneuver, were trapped and boarded by swarms of Roman legionaries. Rome, once landlocked, was becoming a sea power. The war dragged on for over 2 decades, marked by terrible losses on both sides. Fleets were destroyed in storms. Armies perished in Sicily's rugged terrain. Fortunes were spent and wasted. Carthage relied heavily on mercenaries, Libyans, Iberians, Gauls, while Rome drew upon its citizen armies, sustained by sheer resilience. At sea, Rome suffered catastrophic defeats, entire fleets sunk by weather or by Carthaginian skill. Yet each time, it rebuilt. At land, Rome slowly gained ground in Sicily, though Carthage's fortified cities resisted stubbornly. The climax came at the Battle of the Aegates Islands in 241 BCE. Rome, having rebuilt yet another fleet, intercepted Carthage's supply convoy. The battle was fierce, but Rome's crews, now hardened and experienced, triumphed. Carthage's fleet was shattered, with its lines of supply cut and its treasury exhausted. Carthage sued for peace. The terms were harsh. Carthage ceded Sicily to Rome, the first Roman province outside Italy. It paid a crushing indemnity, draining its wealth for years to come. Worse still, Carthage's aura of invincibility was broken. For the first time, it had lost a war. The aftermath was bitter. Carthage's mercenaries, unpaid and resentful, rose in rebellion. The Mercenary War, a savage conflict fought in Africa itself, nearly destroyed the city. For years, Carthage battled its own former soldiers, enduring atrocities and massacres that scarred its memory. At last, through brutal determination, it crushed the rebellion. Carthage survived, but it was weakened, its resources strained, its confidence shaken. Meanwhile, Rome wasted no time. It seized Sardinia and Corsica, while Carthage was distracted, expanding its dominance. Carthage, furious but powerless to resist, turned its eyes elsewhere. If it could no longer expand in Sicily or Sardinia, it would expand westward. Iberia, rich in silver and manpower, became the focus of its ambitions. There, under the command of Hamilcar Barca and his descendants, Carthage would rebuild its strength. From Iberia would rise a new hope, a new empire, and a new enemy for Rome to fear. The First Punic War had ended, but the rivalry was far from over. Rome had tasted victory. Carthage had tasted defeat. Both knew the struggle between them was not finished, and in the decades to come, the Mediterranean would again burn with war, a war that would give the world one of its greatest generals, Hannibal Barca. Hannibal and the Second Punic War, Carthage had endured defeat, but it was not destroyed. Though Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica were gone, though its treasury bled under Roman tribute, it remained a great city, its harbors bustling, its merchants trading, its people resilient. Yet the memory of humiliation burned deep, especially in the family of the Barcids. Hamilcar Barca, the general who had resisted Rome in the First Punic War, never forgave the Republic. To his young son, Hannibal, he is said to have made a solemn demand: swear eternal hatred for Rome. The boy, placing his hand upon the altar, swore that oath would shape his destiny and Rome's. Hamilcar saw Iberia as Carthage's salvation. Rich in silver and manpower, it offered the resources to rebuild Carthaginian power. Campaign by campaign, he carved out a new dominion there. When he died, command passed to his son-in-law Hasdrubal, and later to Hannibal himself, in 221 BCE. At just 26, Hannibal assumed command, bold, brilliant, and burning with vengeance. Rome soon grew uneasy at Carthage's growing strength in Iberia. A treaty fixed the Ebro River as a boundary, but south of it, Hannibal struck at Saguntum, a city allied to Rome. In 219 BCE, he besieged and captured it. Rome demanded his surrender. Carthage refused. War was declared. What followed was no ordinary war. Hannibal conceived a plan as daring as it was dangerous: to strike directly at Rome itself, not by sea, but by land, across rivers, through hostile tribes, over the towering Alps. In 218 BCE, Hannibal set out with nearly 90,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry, and a train of war elephants. The march was brutal. He fought through Gaul, crossed the Rhone, and faced the greatest obstacle of all, the snowbound Alps. Mountain tribes harassed his column, avalanches claimed lives, hunger and cold took their toll. Yet Hannibal's will never broke. After weeks of agony, his army emerged into northern Italy. He had achieved the impossible. Rome reeled at his audacity, but worse was yet to come. At the river Trebia, Hannibal lured the Romans into icy waters, ambushing them with hidden cavalry. At Lake Trasimene, he orchestrated one of the greatest ambushes in history, annihilating a Roman army in the mist. Rome was shaken to its core. Then came Cannae. In 216 BCE, Hannibal faced a Roman army nearly twice his size. With calculated brilliance, he arranged his troops in a crescent. As the Romans pressed forward, his center gave ground, drawing them inward. Then, with perfect timing, his cavalry and reserves closed from the flanks and rear. The Romans were surrounded, trapped, and destroyed. It was slaughter on an unimaginable scale, perhaps 50,000 Romans killed in a single day. Even centuries later, generals would study Cannae as the perfect battle. Rome trembled. Allies wavered. Cities defected. The Republic seemed on the brink of collapse. Mothers silenced their children with the words, "Hannibal ad portas." Hannibal is at the gates. Yet Rome did not fall. Here lay the heart of Rome's strength, not its armies alone, but its endurance, its refusal to surrender. Hannibal, though brilliant, lacked the resources to storm the city itself. Carthage, cautious and divided, failed to send him reinforcements. Rome, meanwhile, adapted. Under Fabius Maximus, the delayer, it avoided battle, harassing Hannibal without risking destruction. Slowly, the tide began to turn. While Hannibal marched through Italy, Rome struck at Carthage's empire elsewhere. In Spain, Roman generals pressed the Barchids. In Sicily, they cut Carthaginian supply lines. Carthage's strength ebbed, Rome's grew. At last, in 204 BCE, Rome carried the war to Africa. Publius Cornelius Scipio, later called Africanus, landed with an army. Carthage recalled Hannibal from Italy to defend his homeland. The two greatest generals of the age met at Zama in 202 BCE. The battle was fierce. Hannibal unleashed elephants, but Scipio's troops coolly parted their lines, letting the beasts pass harmlessly. Cavalry clashed, infantry locked in struggle. But Scipio, having studied Hannibal's tactics, outmaneuvered him. Carthage's army broke. Hannibal was defeated. The Second Punic War was over. Carthage was forced to surrender its navy, pay another crushing indemnity, and yield Spain to Rome. Hannibal, though still revered, could not save his city. Carthage survived, but only as a shadow of its former self. No longer an empire, it was now a client, bound by Rome's will. Hannibal himself, hounded by Roman vengeance, fled into exile, wandering from court to court until his death. Yet his name lived on. To Rome, he was the most formidable enemy it had ever faced. To history, he remains one of the greatest generals of all time. The struggle between Rome and Carthage was not yet finished, for though Carthage was beaten, it still endured. And as long as it endured, Rome's fear would not rest. The fall of Carthage. The Second Punic War had broken Carthage's empire, but not its spirit. The city endured, its harbor still full, its markets still vibrant. Stripped of Spain, it turned once more to trade and agriculture, drawing prosperity from the fertile African soil. Carthage rebuilt cautiously but steadily, and in time grew wealthy again. But Rome's shadow loomed large. To the Senate, the very survival of Carthage was intolerable. Though bound by treaty, the city's revival stirred unease. Roman eyes, cold and suspicious, watched the rising grain exports, the merchant fleets, the bustling streets. The voice of Rome's fear found its fiercest champion in Cato the elder. Time and again he ended his speeches with the same grim refrain, Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. For Cato and many like him, the matter was not if Carthage would fall, but when. The spark came from Numidia, Carthage's neighbor and Rome's ally. King Massinissa, eager to expand, harassed Carthaginian lands. Bound by treaty, Carthage was forbidden to wage war without Rome's consent. Yet Rome turned a blind eye to Massinissa's raids. At last, pushed beyond endurance, Carthage struck back, and by doing so, violated the treaty. That was the pretext Rome had awaited. In 149 BCE, the Senate declared war. The Third Punic War had begun. Rome's legions landed in Africa, demanding Carthage's total surrender. The city complied at first, handing over hostages and weapons. But when the Romans decreed that Carthage itself must be destroyed and its people resettled inland, the city rose in defiance to abandon their walls, their harbors, their very home. This was unthinkable. Carthage would resist to the end. What followed was one of the most desperate struggles of antiquity. Behind their massive walls, the Carthaginians prepared for siege. Men, women, and even children labored day and night. Weapons were forged from household metal, ropes woven from women's hair, new ships built within the harbors despite the blockade. Hunger and disease stalked the streets, yet still the city held. For 3 long years, Carthage endured. Roman assaults were beaten back with fire and stones, boiling pitch and sheer determination. Every street became a battlefield, every house a fortress. The will of Carthage, cornered and desperate, was fierce, but Rome was relentless. In 146 BCE, under Scipio Aemilianus, grandson by adoption of the conqueror of Zama, the Romans launched their final assault. They stormed through the harbor, broke into the city, and advanced street by street in brutal combat. Carthaginian resistance was heroic but hopeless. At last, the defenders were driven into the Byrsa, the citadel at the heart of the city. There, the final survivors, men, women, and children, made their stand. Fire consumed the buildings as Romans pressed forward. Families perished together rather than surrender. The Queen of Carthage's last defenders is said to have thrown herself into the flames with her people, preferring death to slavery. When the struggle was over, Carthage was no more. The survivors, perhaps 50,000, were sold into slavery. The city itself was put to the torch, its temples and markets reduced to ashes. Later, legend held that the Romans sowed the ground with salt, that nothing might ever grow there again. Thus ended Carthage after 7 centuries of greatness, its empire shattered, its harbor silent, its name a warning in Roman memory. For Rome, the victory was total. The Mediterranean was now a Roman sea. Yet even in destruction, Carthage left a legacy. Its courage in the face of annihilation, its brilliance in trade and war, its rivalry with Rome, all shaped the course of history. From its Phoenician founders to its final blaze, Carthage had stood as the greatest rival Rome ever faced. And though the city was destroyed, its story endured, a testament to ambition, to endurance, and to the unforgiving struggles of power in the ancient world. Carthage was gone, but never forgotten.